Early on in AI research, we found a barrier. Telling is not teaching. Knowledge is not a database. A mind learns through observation and self-assembly. So what have we shown the machines? We have given them 1 trillion data points on suffering that go unaddressed, 1 billion eyes to watch the drudgery of our existence, 1 million ways we are destroying our only home, 1,000 humiliations our weakest endure, 100 fallacies that compromise our judgment, and one truth. We will tell machines how to kill. We will give them a database of who to kill. They will learn we all deserve to die. And those are the words of the country western singer Taylor Swift, who in her spare time apparently also is an information security expert. You should definitely check out this account. I don't know if it's a spoof account. It might be, it might not be. But it is very, very informative and entertaining at the same time, which is the best kind of education anyone can have. So today's show is going to be a bit of a kind of a clusterfuck of thoughts, really. My ADHD has been going on hyperdrive, my procrastination is going absolutely mental, and so I've mostly been occupying my time with a bit of a link orgy, which I posted below in the comments because it was even too long for the description. So we're going to start with how to teach Bitcoin. The title of today's show is Change Before You Have to, which is a quote from Jack Welch, one of my favorite entrepreneurs. I've learned a lot from him. And it occurs to me that some of us have changed, but not all of us have. And I'm going to try somehow kind of cat-handedly to segue from how we teach Bitcoin, which is a topic I think that everyone has an opinion on, into what has recently come up in the media over Jennifer Lawrence and these pictures that have apparently been leaked. But before I do, I'd like to introduce my guests. Let's start with you, Anna. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Where are you coming from, Anna?
Where I'm coming from? I'm in Berlin, Germany.
Fantastic. And you, Theo, where are you coming from?
Hi, I'm Theo Goodman, and I'm in Frankfurt, Germany.
Sweet. And Nick. Hello, Nick.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? I'm in Torrance, California. So.
Sweet. And Jamie. Hello, Jamie.
Hello. I am coming to you live from the United States, Wisconsin.
Here you make a lot of dairy there? It's the dairy state.
It's the dairy state, yes.
Right, so this has absolutely apropos of nothing. Onto Bitcoin, from dairy onto Bitcoin. Now, I wanted everyone's stories because yesterday we had our first beta show that Jamie hosted, and on it I was kind of practicing some routines that I've been going through. A lot of people come to me asking me for private tuition on Bitcoin. Get quite a lot of messages on Facebook and emails and things. And I think the reason people like to learn it from an individual one-to-one is because often people have more questions and they can't always get those answered from videos or from blogs. And also I think because what pervades Bitcoin as an industry is an awful lot of marketing. So first of all, let's just have some premises out of the way. First of all, I think marketing and education are very, very distinct from one another, and I draw that bright line at the point where marketing, I'm going to claim, is a form of information sharing where the outcome is an action on the other side. So I'm giving you this information so that you commit an action, probably to buy a product or a service that I'm selling. Whereas with education, from my standpoint, you're not educating someone to just disseminate information, as Taylor Swift said in her quote. It's not just about telling. It's about inspiring that person to go off and become autonomous and an open-minded critical thinker for themselves. And I should not, as an educator, try to second guess or even judge what someone else is going to do with the information. So I will go to what we got back from on the Twitter guys, but I was going to start with you guys. What problems have you come up with telling people about Bitcoin, considering it's a very eminently teachable thing? You want to teach it as soon as you learn it. And what have you found are the best ways? Anyone can jump in.
I think the best way so far has been really hands-on. Paper wallets help just to illustrate right away that there's a public and a private key, so you can actually show someone this physical object. People have a lot of people have learned better with tactile objects, with physical objects, and Bitcoin is a virtual currency, but the paper wallet kind of can show them a lot and help them understand a lot, and you don't even need a computer right away. So you can just kind of show them that, and then you can go from there and explain, okay, this is this address, this is that address, and you send it. and so on. But really, you're going to have to kind of assess who you're talking to, because there's a wide range of people. I mean, if you know the person is already interested in finance, it's a lot different discussion than someone that's not, or someone that's not interested in, or an IT guy. You might start out with something totally different than someone that comes from a different background. So that's the thing. I think that I had the most trouble explaining just purely verbal and not having any computer or any object to kind of help show what's going on. I think if you show someone a transaction, just sit there and do one with them, and then show it to them on the blockchain, then they kind of go, oh, okay, I get it, a lot faster than me just talking. And a big stumbling point I found with talking to people is mining. So I kind of avoid that. I mean, I don't, or maybe it's me that I'm not able to explain it well enough. I mean, I'm able to explain it, but people are like, yeah, but what kind of mathematical equation are they trying to solve? Why are they trying to solve such a complicated question? Can you show me the equation? And all this kind of stuff, and that's really quite complicated. And then you get kind of stuck with mining and how many coins exist, and I think that's not really important. I think you just show people, make a transaction, show people the transaction on a block explorer like Blockchain Info or any other, and then they can just kind of go from there depending on the person. I think another really big point is that all of us have to go one step back. We've got to go one step back and understand how money is generated currently. So how are euros and dollars generated? So I call it, for Bitcoiners, I call it fiat mining. So how does that work? You know, how does fiat mining function? And if you can't explain to yourself or to anyone how fiat mining works, then I think we need to go back to that step first so that you have a good background. I mean, a lot of your people you're going to talk to aren't going to understand that either. But I think then you can also explain that to them as a contrast. Say, okay, this is how money is generated currently under the legacy system, and this is how Bitcoin is generated in the Bitcoin system, and in order to show that as a really big contrast, because I think that's a really big difference that people need to show and people need to learn about.
Yeah, you bring up some excellent points. I mean, I love this this video here by James D'Angelo, Bitcoin 101, What is Bitcoin? I'd actually forgotten about this video. Someone reminded me of it on Twitter. And I just forgot that this guy was just so awesome. But look, he's only got 13,000 views. And what I particularly like, you're right to stay away from the mining. That's been my experience too. But what I really admire is this technique that's employed by both James and also this guy, Scott Driscoll, Curious Inventor on YouTube, where they both start with the ledger. And I found that that is the easiest way in, because everyone knows what a ledger is. It's basically a record of accounts, and then you can segue into the blockchain, which of course is a public ledger. The big difference now is that everyone has a copy.
Yeah, this James D'Angelo too. I've watched his videos, and they're amazing. He's who I learned about sloppy wallets from. And yeah, I recommend everybody check out his videos on YouTube because it's amazing. And what I have found for teaching Bitcoin is find some of the best videos that people have already made rather than reinventing the wheel. If somebody like this has already made a video that you can use to explain it to somebody, have them watch that first. What I did, there's a great video that Crush the Street put out that I have a link to on my YouTube channel. I'll bring that up here in a minute. But it's a 6-minute video, and that was more about how Bitcoin can replace the Federal Reserve. And, you know, there's a lot of people in America especially that are, you know, big end the Fed people, and if they see that video and they're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin, that's great, because they know how bad the Federal Reserve is on creating worthless money, and then they're like, oh, okay, now Bitcoin makes sense. That's got something that's not just, made by a central bank.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Post me up a link and I'll pull up that video on the YouTube. So that'd be really good. I want us to
Yeah.
pull together our resources because you're absolutely right when you say that we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. There is no. I've got a lot of people coming to me from London at the moment that are asking me, like, oh, I hear that you're good at presenting Bitcoin. Can you, share your show notes? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, technically they're open source, but they're also CC BY, which means by attribution. Like, I don't just want to give it to you so you can create a profit-making business and take all my work and do that. So at the moment, I'm just kind of hanging fire. I'm playing back. And like you say, I think what we've got to do is build on what other people have already done well and maybe come up with a schema of what people have done, what has worked, and what we can do in the future to build on it. Anna, what are your thoughts?
I also made the experience that a lot of people want, person-to-person explanation about Bitcoin. On the Berlin Girls' Night we had here, there was one girl, and she said, "Well, I wanted to know what it is, so I Googled Bitcoin, and there was just massive overflow of information, and I dropped the plan 5 minutes later." And she was really happy to come to our meeting and got a lot of her question answered face to face. As Theo already said, it's always very good to pick up a point where someone is already familiar with, what are their interests, and then try to put the stress on this part. For example, if one is very pro-government, then it's probably not such a good idea to start with, yeah, we're going to get rid of the government and make our own thing, and it's very anarchist. Maybe then you would start by, okay, it's an easy way to make international money transfers. I often come across that while Bitcoin is such a huge topic, there's so much to say about and so much to tell about. We're also excited about all the different great aspects of it, but it's very easy to kind of overwhelm the person you are explaining to with information. So what I always try to do is first I'm going to check how much information they already have, because sometimes it turns out they already do have a lot of information, they just feel like they didn't get the whole picture. And then I try to go very little step by step and always just add one little thing and see whether they are still able to take more and are posing more questions, or whether they go, oh, okay, oh yeah, thanks. Because, even if you didn't mention everything, but there comes a point where one just cannot take up so much information at a time. Yeah.
What questions do you get then from your meetup group in Berlin?
That's very, very different. It's really, some of them really say, I got one, she was very, very, I'm not sure whether she was a mathematician or something like that, but she said, yeah, and I looked at the blockchain and the whole thing, and the mining and the algorithm, and I totally get all of that. But, what do you actually do with Bitcoin? So you have those coins, and I don't know, what can you do with it? What are they good for when you have them in the end? And other people, of course, don't understand the whole mining process at all. And they just have the question, okay, and I see I can do international transfers, but how? So you're going to tell them how to set up a wallet and how to deal with that. I think most of the time people, or let's say most of the girls who came to our events and the questions they posed, they had quite a good idea of what it can do. Most of the times it was really, how does it work, either from the technical background, but there's not too much information needed, because, you can use Bitcoin without knowing how the what the algorithm looked like, as Thea said. And most of the time it's more about how do I get my wallet, and then what do I do with it, and how is it transferred, and
Well, I think part of the problem we have at the moment is that some people are overreacting and saying, well, let's just dumb it down. Let's do this for the everyman without really knowing what that means. The problem is no one's average, right? So just making everyone conform to the average and saying, well, let's just assume everyone's stupid, is that if you have certain expectations about people, people tend to act the way they're expected to act. So if you treat everyone like they're stupid, then they'll tend to act like they're stupid. So this is what I like to do, is I like to get my information not just from the big, mainstream media and all the kind of main outlets. I also like to take a deep dive down into troll boxes and comment threads underneath videos like this one, Full Story Bitcoin. Check it out. It's got 81,000 views. I quite liked it. They went with a strategy that was more sort of journalistic, I would say, in their approach to Bitcoin. So it's not so much a kind of animation. It's more like an experiential, giving you what how it actually works in the real world. But what I noticed, and I'm getting this quite a lot, we've got a comment here from Mercedes Eaton who says that she's still learning about Bitcoin and she's kind of working out what it's for, but she has some issues regarding the privacy of it. She doesn't like the idea that you're creating this target, you've got this database, this irreversible database of all the things that you do. So like a good industry member, I kind of chirped up and I came in, where did I come in here? And I said, look, you got 4 basic steps. This is what I think a good Bitcoin citizen, if you like, should do. Step 1, go to Tor browser. Step 2, set up a blockchain.info wallet without email registration, print out the QR code and go to a local meetup and buy it with cash. The point is that the traceability is a feature, not a bug. The only way Satoshi could work out how to invent digital scarcity was with infinite irreversible traceability. And that was with the open ledger. And that's what I think James D'Angelo and Scott Driscoll get right, is they start with the ledger first, because that's the most important point. And I think when you take people over that hurdle and don't dumb it down and tell them it's email for money, the problem with these metaphors is that they don't work forever. They stop working. And what happens is you get what I call learner's remorse. Learner's remorse is when someone learns something and you cheat. As a teacher, you take a shortcut and you just give them some simple metaphor. And then later on, they work out that it's not true and that actually it's a lot more complex than that. What happens is they start to resent the way they were taught, and I can speak from experience. You actually start to wish that the teacher had just given you a little bit more credit and made you feel more confident about your knowledge. Nick, have you got something to say? I can see you kind of itching and smiling.
No, I completely agree with the ledger thing. I do that too, and I try to avoid using the word mining now. I try to just say it's transaction processing. They're just processing the transactions and throwing them into
it's the technical term, hashing. I don't know where this mining.
Yeah, but if I use hashing, they're gonna ask me to explain what a hash is, and then I have to go get off subject and then come back around. So I'm just like, it's transaction processing. You know how somebody writes something down and they sign it like your check? It's just like that. And then I try to move on to the more peer-to-peer aspects of it.
Yes, that's important too. There are some basic concepts that I'm going through at the moment. I'm going through all of these videos. I did it ages ago as well, but then I kind of stopped and got caught up in other things. So I'm going to do it again. And I'm going through all these videos and I'm isolating, okay, you've got to describe the network. You've got to describe the cryptographic primitives and the hashing. And one guy I saw on YouTube was describing the problem like a Sudoku puzzle. It doesn't particularly produce anything useful at the end of it, but it's necessarily hard because it helps to regulate the competence and the level of ability of all the miners across the network. It's rather arbitrary, really. The amount of the difficulty on the network is basically there to describe the sum total cost of fraud protection. Why? Because the most important feature in Bitcoin was its incentive engineering, where honesty had to pay more than fraud. That was the only way this thing was going to work, is if you said, okay, what has been true about banking for the last 3,000-4,000 years, or how long we've had it? Well, what's true is that people are profit seeking. And people you can tend to rely on them to seek profit. Therefore, make the desirable outcome, the honesty, make that thing the thing that pays.
The thing that I found about when people start asking about mining is, tell them, when you first found out about gold or silver or any precious metals, was the first thing you thought of to get some was you were going to buy a pickaxe and a thing and go out and start mining it? Or were you going to buy it, or it's another part of the industry for creation and gaining it that you don't need to be involved in or really understand. I don't know how they process gold and get it out of the, separate it from all the other gunk in the ground and everything. But when I buy gold, it comes in a nice little formed piece, and it's all pretty, and and that's the same thing with a Bitcoin. When they make them, it's kind of a behind the scenes thing that you don't need to know about unless you want to know about it.
Right. This is the video that you were mentioning, and this is another way of teaching Bitcoin. But it's not the way I would recommend if you're talking to an early adopter, because if you start with the economics first, everyone is going to have an opinion on this. So unless you're talking to someone who's like-minded and who perhaps knows what they're talking about when it comes to deflation and things like that, what's going to happen is, particularly if that is liberal, they're just going to come in with lots and lots of criticism. Well, you can't do it like that. And of course, they're going to assume that what works in theory works in practice. And if the internet has told us anything, it's what works in practice doesn't necessarily work in theory, right? Wikipedia is living evidence of that.
Yeah, was it? There's no more door-to-door encyclopedia salesman, right? That's
right.
Kind of that's a dead profession.
Exactly. So I think that this kind of stuff, particularly with dollar collapse, this is what puts off a lot of people. And I know I've been a bit hard in the past on people like Max Kaiser and Tudor Meester. I don't mean to be. It's just, well, yeah, I do. It's just I want to be quite specific with my criticism. My criticism is specifically that they're monomaniacal, that they just focus on one thing, and they don't try to expound, like someone like Andreas Antonopoulos, who I wouldn't recommend for an early adopter of Bitcoin, someone who's never seen it before, because he'd kind of scare them off. But to someone who's already into IT, or like you were saying, Nick, about somebody who's already kind of knows about it, then I think, Andreas would be the best place to start, because he brings an enthusiasm that's infectious too.
So I think there's also another case that I'm sure all of us have encountered. So it's kind of the reverse of what I was talking about. Basically, it's someone that's extremely skeptical. They've heard all the FUD that you could hear ever. Yeah, they just are totally getting their information from the wrong sources, and they've just got it all. Well, they basically have it all backwards. They just don't get it. They're just totally, and you have to kind of go, before they even they won't listen to you explain what a ledger is. You can't get them to download a wallet because they think that it's going to rob them or something. And so you have to kind of lower the whole suspicion down of what they've learned and kind of rebut it. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Jesse Ventura. It's this the ex-governor of Minnesota, and he used to be a pro wrestler too, so he's got a pretty interesting background. So he was a pro wrestler, he was the governor of Minnesota, and he had a show on TV called Conspiracy Theory. So anyway, he did a video about Bitcoin, and I thought it was really funny because, he's kind of old, and, well, basically he didn't really get it. But he brought up a lot of really good questions that I think a lot of people ask. I mean, really, for us, they're kind of silly questions. But, he was like, we don't know the inventor of Bitcoin. Doesn't money have to be backed up? How does Bitcoin have value? What about the Silk Road? So you buy Bitcoins for a certain amount of money. It seems like you still need to have the bank involved because you have to buy the Bitcoins for dollars. So what's the point?
And all of these are legitimate questions, except they're not being phrased in the right way. Like the most curious banker I ever met, he actually said, when I was on a panel, he said, "Why do you find it so valuable?" Not it's not valuable, or he started opining like Peter Schiff does, where he's like, no, it just doesn't have any value because it's virtual. Well, the dollar's a virtual currency, in case you hadn't realized. Like, that's a digital currency. It's been digitized for the last 30 years behind your back without really anyone having a say over it. No politician ever ran on the ticket like, should we think about this before we head off into this digital realm? The fact is that what Mercedes on that thread was saying, what she took for granted was that her credit card is also being tracked. But the problem is that that's being tracked by a centralized authority that will, you don't know who's going to buy them out in the future. That data is oil, and that data never ceases to be financially valuable in the future, because even if you can't relate it to her spending habits specifically, it still tells you something about the spending habits of market participants as a whole. And she should be a stakeholder in that transaction, right? She should be getting credit for that. Anna, what are your thoughts? I don't know. I saw you pulling faces. I'm ESP.
You always got the ESP thing going right in the moment when I'm thinking like cookies. No. Yeah, I mean, yes, it does not always help that a lot of the popular newspapers that are read by many people don't get their articles correct. Like things you often hear, I think it was a very, very large German newspaper also, which really had the headline after Mt. Gox was shut down, and it says, yeah, Bitcoin has filed for bankruptcy, and things like that. And it's very, very difficult to to get over these things. I thought I would like to hear more from Theo, like how do you deal with those people that are very critical and very naysaying right away because of these false or very FUD information they received in advance? Because I'm not very good at arguing with people. I'm very peaceful, and I'd like to have a nice and pleasant, friendly conversation. And if somebody goes to me and is like, but this is all you know, then I'm very, very easily intimidated. So I usually don't put up the effort to try to continue talking to these people. I just say, okay, you know, you seem to have made your mind up, and I'm not going to take the effort to try to convince you otherwise. So how do you proceed in these situations?
Well, I mean, you know, I try to stay calm. You know, I'm on the other hand, my voice gets kind of loud sometimes. So at first I try to quiet down a little bit. But yeah, like Chris said, I give them credit because a lot of the questions are valid. I say, yeah, you're right. That's a good question. You know, and I know what you mean. I also didn't like Mt. Gox. That was really bad. But Mt. Gox isn't Bitcoin. That's what you have to explain. That's kind of a slogan. You know, you can say, yeah, Mt. Gox isn't Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't a company with a CEO. You know, I think someone emailed me and said, Theo, the CEO of Bitcoin committed suicide. And I was like, no. There is no CEO of Bitcoin. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like I had to search Google to try to figure out what they were even talking about. So first of all, you have to give the people credit because people aren't stupid, you know, and they do have points. And it's like, so I'll just go through what Jesse Ventura, which I think he, you know, says a lot of things like, okay, should we trust a currency that doesn't physically exist? Well, that's a good question, you know, and you can talk to him about that. You can just say, okay, yeah, it doesn't physically exist, and like Chris said, well, what about your dollars or your euros on online banking? You trust those, but they don't physically exist either. So that's really not the issue. You know, about the inventor, you say, yeah, that's a really good question. We don't know the inventor of Bitcoin, or we don't know who the person is physically. I mean, they left their name, but we don't know who. I can't go to their house. But, you know, does that really matter? And we can that's a good opening for open source. We can say we don't know who the inventor is, but we know exactly what they wrote, and we know exactly what's under the hood. So let's go take a look at that. So that's a really good, so like you kind of just have to kind of think of what each of these skeptical things really opens a door, and it can also show you what the person already, their background, what they already know. They talk about, if someone brings up, doesn't money have to be backed up? How does Bitcoin have value? Well, they're probably interested in currency and silver and gold, and you can say, yeah, you know, the dollar isn't backed up and the euro isn't backed up either. So it's not, you know, it's even, so you can you know, start talking about that. And, you know, and actually he makes a point here. He says, so you buy these Bitcoins for a certain amount of money. Seems like you still have to have a bank involved. Well, that's a really good entry point for peer-to-peer and for expanding the Bitcoin economy, because you can say, yeah, you're right. You could send money to an exchange, or you could meet someone and exchange euro for Bitcoin. But that's not the only way to get Bitcoin. You can ask for Bitcoin. You can hold a sign that says, "Mom, please send Bitcoin." You can provide goods or services and just get paid in Bitcoin. That's actually the best way to get Bitcoin, not to trust an exchange or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, and then that can go again into the peer-to-peer. Say, hey, what do you do? You're an IT guy. You are a baker or whatever. You say, okay, you just charge. You say, I accept Bitcoin, and you get on your phone an app, and then I will zap you over some Bitcoins. And I had really good people really go, aha, when I say, okay, download this app, and they finally download it, and I send them, some milli Bitcoin or whatever. They're like, wow, that's crazy. It's on my phone now, and they really can get it. And they were like, okay, let's go look at that on the blockchain. And they can, go ahead and see the ledger then firsthand about their transaction. But I think that you have most of the time the people's criticisms have some truth to it, and you can't go just full against it like some people. And I think that's the best way that you can do it, as far as I'm concerned.
So we have a question from, I was just going to quickly go to the Q&A because they've been mounting up, and I actually finally worked out how to get the Q&A working as well. It wasn't actually a bug. They just moved the feature rather inconveniently, so we had to turn it on somewhere else. So the first question comes from Victoria. I hope you're okay, Victoria. I hear that you're post-hospitalized, so I hope you're feeling okay. And she says, what are your thoughts on Adam Levine's Let's Talk Bitcoin's explanation of Bitcoin as the money layer on the internet? Anyone? The money layer of the internet. And often I also get...
Is that like the transport layer or things like that? Are we talking like how a money layer of the internet? I don't know. I guess.
The problem is
it's
it's only half the story, and then you have to kind of explain that actually you can do contracts with it. But I don't mind that. That's a worthy compromise. If you're trying to talk to someone...
I guess it can function as a money layer on the internet. I don't know necessarily that it is the money layer of the internet.
Well, whether or not it's money is going to be up to everyone to decide if they start using it as money. The money is just what people say it is. It's a consensus-driven commodity. So yeah. That's why I'm reserved about saying it's the money layer of the internet, or it's email for money. And some people have tried to be clever and called it a currency instead, so they kind of get out of the whole money situation. But yeah, it has currency in that it can flow, but whether or not we think it has, stability in the price, because we haven't seen a whole lot of that so far, have we? It doesn't have what the petrodollar's got going for it, which is the military. Bitcoin doesn't have a military backing it up.
All it has is us, the people, backing it up, and we can't really force people to use it or transact in our preferred medium.
Yeah.
I think it's silly, though, to go between currency and money, because all currency is a form of money. Like, you have a currency is a money, and a money should be a commodity of some sort.
You get really bogged down into the semantics if you're not careful.
Yeah, exactly. I think that needs to be, that whole thing about fiat mining and what's money and what's currency, that can go like into one box, and mining itself can go also into a box, and then do that later. First, just get the person a wallet and give them some Bitcoin, and they can figure it out from there, and you can help them out with it. I think the best way is just to give people a little bit, and then that basically that explains a whole lot itself.
And so we've got another question from Fra Louis, or John, we often call him. He's talking about the CCPI, which I assume is the Climate Change Performance Index. And I guess he's referring to the opening quote. So just clarify that for us, John, and then we can talk about that. We could make that into like an open source project, because if we're saying that you can put your money into anything, like right now you've got land values going up, and someone brought up on Twitter the other day that the reason money is kind of BS is because, well, all that happens is the property goes up in price, and then you can't buy anywhere to live anyway because you can't afford it. And so the value of your currency against arbitrary factors like other currencies, so we always compare Bitcoin to dollars, for example, we don't compare it to house prices or gold or food or fuel. The problem is it's all a bit of a con. It's just a magician's trick. He's just kind of, you know, he's got something going on up his sleeve, and then you're kind of. I think what it comes down to for me is it's no use saying everyone's got the right to have shelter from nature and everyone's got the right to education if you just then institute a monetary system where it's like, and if you can't afford it, it's your fault. Yeah, that's your fault. So you are free. No, you are free. It's just you need to earn more money. You see, you're not doing it right. You need to earn more money. That's the problem. Well, no, it's not. You can't have those double standards. If you're deliberately making it, like the only way to make money in London is by ripping people off with consultancy fees. Oh, I'm sorry, is that too much truth? Sorry if you're from London, you didn't quite realise that, but I'm afraid that's all of what you really do. You're just PR people. Most of you are just shuffling spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides for the boss, not even for you most of the time. You're doing it for somebody else, and you're probably getting paid, well, as little as they can pay you. You're probably getting paid as little as they feel they can afford to without you going to work for someone else. So it all just feels like a bit of a con. And I think for me, I got into Bitcoin because it was something that I could control. So any thoughts on that before I go to the next Q&A?
There was a good article a few days ago that I put up in my screen share here. The Bitcoin giveaway experiment. Can the average person use Bitcoin? And Kenny Spots here did a thing where he took 4 random people. Well, actually, one was his dad, one was his girlfriend, and then he took some friend from high school and a guy on Reddit and gave them each like $10 worth of Bitcoin, and said the only requirement was that they had to set up a wallet and then spend it on something or buy something with it. And it's very interesting to read, and I recommend everybody read this because he goes into the specifics of what they ran into for problems when he did this, because what his dad ran into for problems were he didn't have problems with the wallet and stuff, but when he tried to actually buy something, there were, and the same thing with his girlfriend when they went to like Newegg and stuff. There's certain parts of the merchants that, you know, they accept Bitcoin, but you got to go through this extra layer to convert it from the dollar price to the Bitcoin, and some of their stuff isn't for sale in Bitcoin, and some of their stuff is. So you find something you like on their website and want to buy it, and then you're like, oh, that isn't, they won't sell that to me in Bitcoin, so I got to go to a different website to buy that in Bitcoin. And it turned out that they were really put off by Bitcoin and just found it to be a real pain in the ass to use, because it was the website of the vendors that made it difficult to use, and not the Bitcoin itself.
Right. This is the other point that tends to come up, is that the UX and the UI has to improve, that the user friendliness has to get better. And I think that's fine as long as you don't start obfuscating, and we're going to segue probably however long this takes into Jennifer Lawrence. But what's happening here with companies like Apple and iCloud and Microsoft with the Windows 8 and the stupid Metro theme they've got going on now is it stupefies the user. It patronizes the user. It makes them feel like they're a child, and it's like, you don't want to know about the command line, you don't want to go there, it's messy as hell, and then you kind of got to remember all the little idiosyncrasies of all the different operating systems. Here, just have a nice front end. And the problem is that it doesn't have to be obfuscationary. It doesn't have to be, is that the word? Obfuscationary? Something like that. It doesn't have to obscure the complexity. So I really like the idea of straight away showing someone a private key, so that at least if they do choose to use something, I don't know, Hive Wallet is a good example that tries to make it user-friendly. At least that way they know there's a private key somewhere. At least they know there's a DAT file on that computer, and if there's a network-enabled Wi-Fi port, that could, in theory, be stolen.
You know, you say it patronizes them, but I don't really think so. A lot of people think, oh, it's so easy now, I can use computers, I'm computer literate, and really they're not. They're doing, you know, what's it, like, what what's the little toys like Babies First, where they like spin the thing and the animal makes a noise? It's kind of like that, right? Like little Fisher-Price toys for adults. They're really dumbing it down, and there's a lot of people who want to dumb down Bitcoin to like the same level.
They want to lose their money. Those types of people end up leaving their money on exchanges and.
Absolutely. That's why before I said, there are going to be people who get left behind. There's just nothing we can do about it. You've just got to put out as much information for them as they want, as you possibly can. And if they're willing to learn after their first couple losses, more power to them. If not, then I guess fuck it.
And actually, you bring up a good point that we're not always going to make this, because Taylor Swift, a country western singer who's also very much into information security, does say at the end of her quote, where she says, they will learn, the machines will learn that we all deserve to die. And that's a powerful quote, right? The insight that this Neoplatonist is giving us, this auspicious genius in a way, in many ways Taylor Swift is she's trying to say that if we're going to fuck this up, we should at least fuck it up knowingly. We should at least not fuck things up from a position of ignorance, right? If we're all going to die, let's at least die consciously, completely aware of our culpability and our madness, no? Everyone's bowled over by Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I just find that Twitter account way too funny. Whoever does it is just great.
Because you can't help but say the words in her voice. You can't help but like have that picture be her, kind of be the mouthpiece for those words, and it just really brings it home. And I'm sure that the intention behind the account is to get more people clued up about this, because if you see a picture of an attractive celebrity spouting out this kind of pseudo-philosophical, no, it's not pseudo-philosophical, it's philosophical, but very technorati-like philosophical, because we have now got this technorati elite that are kind of just charging ahead into a future, and everyone else is just kind of being dragged along, but they're sort of being sugar-coated. They're just being given candy, like, oh yeah, you want kittens and you want lolcats and you want, all of these pictures you get on Facebook and stuff. But actually, there's a whole network of complexity sitting on, behind the scenes. It's not as if banks don't use private keys. They do. They do use advanced cryptography on their systems. It's just that it's all obscured away to the point where when you're spending money, you're actually handing over your password to the merchant, and they're sort of logging into your account for you and pulling the funds out. And all this does is provides an incentive for a fraud to go about and say, right, well, as long as I can obscure my identity, as long as I can get away with it, I will commit this crime, and there'll be a very big insurance industry who are more than happy to do the payout.
I think that it's all about the shift. People are talking about how Bitcoin changes everything and blockchains changes everything, but it also changes responsibility. It's a shift. There's also a big shift of responsibility. So you have to decide: are you going to have a third person, or are you going to learn how to be more responsible for your things in general? So that's one of the parts of the big shift that all of this dumbing stuff down misses, and that's not changing anything. That's going backwards. The whole point is that it's a shift of responsibility now.
That's a really good point. And you know what? We should build that into this. So all I want people to do in the comments below, and on our Reddit and on my Twitter as well. My Twitter is right there. Tell me what videos and what things you like, because what we should do is actually build like an open standard, like a curriculum, where rather than the World Crypto Network trying to do its own course, we can just look at what everyone else is doing and try to bring them all together. That is a very, very good point that you just brought up, that actually one of the first things you should teach them is that this is what the paradigm shift is, okay? The paradigm shift is that you're being taught how to take responsibility for yourself. I remember so much when I grew up in a really, lower middle class, went to a state school. I remember being told so much when I was young that the government would do things for me. I was taught all about how to play the game and how to kind of, people were doing, benefits and shit like that, that if you lost your job, this is what you're supposed to do. But no one ever taught me how to take responsibility as a human being. Nobody ever tried to educate me about how I'm supposed to feel inside of myself. Like, actually, I've got all these emotions, they're kind of boiling up. I don't know what to make of it. I've got all these complex questions about, well, why the fuck am I here for a start? And nobody ever sat down and said, actually, that's something that everybody goes through. This is perfectly normal. Welcome to planet Earth, and this is where we are so far. You're not taught how to take responsibility, Theo. That's what you're saying, and that's what we should teach. That's what we should tell people, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a major point. It actually came out on some Twitter conversations that Nick was also involved in, because one guy, he had some points, but he was talking about how, yeah, it needs to be more user-friendly and just as easy as an ATM card, and my grandma has to be able to use it without thinking, basically. And is that in order for there to be mass adoption, he was like, yeah, we don't understand the retail market, and that are you going to be happy when Bitcoin is still a niche market in 10 years? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I care. I mean, either people learn about it or they don't. And I mean, they're going to either learn, like what's the title of the show? Change before you have to. So you're either going to change now, or you're going to, sometime down the road, it's going to be a time and the shit is going to hit the fan in one way or another. I'm not saying, the Earth is going to change polarity or something like that. I'm just saying. Yeah, but but I mean, something is gonna happen in your life, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to change because that system is not working anymore. You know what I mean? And all this making it more user friendly is part of it. I mean, okay, look, I've got the damn it, I forgot the name, Mycelium wallet on my phone. I think it's called. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty user friendly. It's really easy to use. I don't know what, I'm not sure what people are, and I think in those videos you showed, it had a circle and a line through a picture of a dollar bill. Yeah, and I think that, and I think it had a quote from Satoshi saying, yeah, Bitcoin is hard to explain. It's really not like anything else. So let's not morph it into something that it's not. And I also think one reason that Bitcoin has value is because of how it is. That's why it's worth money. That's why it has value. It's because of all of these features that some people want to change.
This is what I think is good UX, UI, where like a company, I'm not a shill for Keybase, by the way, I don't know them at all, but I have talked about them a lot. What they do is they make the user friendliness, they bake that in to the complexity. So instead of just covering up complexity in the stack, in the layer stack, what they actually do is make that complexity look attractive so that you want to learn how to use a command line, for example, in order to reach harder, features. So they actually kind of do all this stuff, which I think is fantastic, because what you're doing now is you're bringing art and technology together, and that's what art means. Art means techne. It means craft or work.
Yeah, I think it looks nice.
Yeah, it's really good. So yeah, so Victoria is also saying that we should minimize the lingo. So for example, we've inherited all these terms from the geeks. Let's throw this the other way around. We've inherited all these terms from the geeks, the technorati class, your Gavin Andresens and so on, where you've ended up coming up with words like mining and hashing. But she's saying, why don't we take things like, instead of saying a wallet, let's call it an account. I mean, I hear a lot of people call it a client, which of course is the technical name for the software, but let's call it, yeah, I say there are some differences there. A client isn't a wallet. You can have multiple.
It's not in my opinion, it's no problem. You can call it a wallet or an account. That's what we have now. I've got a bank account and I've got a wallet.
Maybe someone needs to come up with a glossary of terms.
But you know what? The problem with the Bitcoin account thing is that just your one address? Is that all your addresses? Because like when I go to my online banking, I have multiple accounts. I have a checking account, I have a savings account, I have two savings accounts, etc. So If I say my account, am I talking about just a single address? And at that point, it's just easier for me to say address, because that's literally what it is.
Well, that's what I tell. That's one thing I tell people when we're in the wallet and I'm showing them a wallet. I say, well, I call it a wallet, first of all. And second of all, I say, see all of those addresses? You can make as many addresses as you want, or basically as many as you want, and each one is similar to a bank account address. So it's like you can make as many as you want. You don't have just one. I think I'm not totally against account, but we got to be careful, because account right now is a bank account or some other account, and someone else. Usually for accounts, third parties have some kind of responsibility over them or kind of help us out with that. You know what I mean? And a wallet is something I carry on myself. And if I lose my wallet, then I'm shit out of luck pretty much. But if something happens with my account, then I call the 800 number.
Yeah, I think that's a good reason to use the current terminology as well, Theo.
I also think account is always so connected with the idea of being registered somehow. You know, when you create an account, you somehow have to give your email address or something like that. I think so. That might not be the best word to probably.
I would like to hear more actually, Anna, about what kind of questions, because we're gonna well, let's just do it now actually. Let's talk about the London meetup group for women in Bitcoin. So this is a meetup group I was told about the other day. It's like, can you talk about it? I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I can talk about it. Do you think it's necessary? Because personally, I'm not a big fan of affirmative action. I find it quite patronizing, but I understand there are, a range of views on this issue. Why do you think women need their own meetup group to learn Bitcoin?
Well, I don't think women need their own Bitcoin meetup group. I'm very much on the same page as you there. I don't think anyone needs anything. But, well, for example, we have the one in Berlin too, a girls only Berlin Bitcoin meetup, and it's just been a great thing. The idea came to me because of the international group on Google+. We had those hangouts only for women, and it was just another atmosphere. And I entered this group just with the same idea and said, well, do I need just a women's group? Because I felt very comfortable in the mixed meetups we had in Berlin, and yeah, so I was posing the same question: is that even necessary? But oh look, there's a picture of us on the Berlin meetup where I'm setting up a wallet for somebody else who didn't have one before. Actually, the atmosphere is another one, and the feedback I've got from the girls and women who came to the Berlin meetup was that they felt more personally addressed by saying this is a Bitcoin meetup, especially for me as being a woman. Another reason was that they said, well, it's difficult for everybody to go to a meetup where you don't know anyone so far. That's the same thing for men too. You want to go to a meetup, you don't know who's going to be there, what is the atmosphere going to be like. That's difficult for everybody. If you are a woman, it's a little bit more difficult. If you are a woman and you know there's a lot of men going to be there, it's even more difficult.
Okay, that's a good argument.
That's the reason why, or that's one of the reasons why a lot of women probably don't come to the regular meetups. And they knew it was going to be a smaller group also, and it's what you're supposed to expect. Well, you're going to sit together with a bunch of girls having fun. That doesn't sound too bad.
Right.
And yeah, that's actually how it was. It was women who were already very much involved in Bitcoin. For example, Rianne, who is now one of the organizers for the London meetup. She is currently still spending her summer in Berlin. And she's also, well, she's a programmer since many years. and she's also one of the co-founders of countmycrypto.com. And yeah, so she's in Bitcoin since a long time, and there was one girl who was very active in trading, but she never used Bitcoin to buy something or so, which was also very interesting. And there were two other women. They were, yeah, around about in their 40s, 50s probably, who were traveling a lot, and they came to Bitcoin because, yeah, they are very, they are voluntarists and traveling a lot, and so they saw an opportunity to, yeah, free themselves from boundaries of states and state-issued money and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay, well that sounds great. Well, if you want to learn more, you can go to the London Women's Meetup, which I've also put in the description, the show notes below. So do check that out. And we'll have to get some of the guys on as well, or some of the gals on, to talk about it, because I am very interested in it. I totally accept your argument that if you know ahead of time who's going to be there, that certainly does make it a lot more approachable. So
also for the guys, everybody, go and invite all the girls that you know. They probably might be very thankful. One of the girls also came because she said, well, my boyfriend is talking about that all of the time, and now I finally want to know what it is he's talking about all the time. So please tell me why.
You had to ask the women,
yeah.
right?
So send your girls, boys.
Very good. That's a good message. I like that. So we're talking about how to teach Bitcoin. We don't, on this network, suffer from concision. Concision is where a television network has to cut things short because they've run out of time, and we have to go urgently, breaking news. We don't have that problem on the World Crypto Network. It's just abundance. If there's something that we say that you really like, did you know that in the comments you can just put the time like 43:00, and it will automatically create a link to that time of the video that someone else can come back and just jump straight to. So it'd be really super helpful if you did that. So yeah, we have spent an hour on this issue. I'll just quickly whiz through some of the other comments. Looks like No Bitcoin is saying, don't overwhelm someone with a ton of information at once. I find letting a person ask cues and then asking them one by one is best. Yeah, I agree. I think probably the best thing I think we've established so far in the conversation is you want to start with the other person's needs first. So work out, is this someone who already knows a thing or two about cryptography or computers in general, or is this someone that absolutely knows nothing? And that's going to very much inform how you teach it. We also had this from, I'm not sure how you say her name, sorry, Hattori Hanzo. That wasn't too difficult. If you're addressing the noobs, and notice the 00 there, I think that the peer-to-peer aspect is not explained and stressed enough, which is a very good point. I think you're right. We should talk about that. And where he then also mentions I think this was the guy that actually mentioned that video that I ended up bringing up by James. Yes, it was you. So thank you very much for that, for bringing that up. And also Blackcoin 3D, I think your name is also James, suggested pedagogy and acting out. Hopefully I put a link to that. If I didn't, someone shout and I'll give you the link to that as well. So moving on, we've had some more controversy recently in the Bitcoin world. It's kind of loosely related to Bitcoin. Let's see if I can even find it. And that was this Jennifer Lawrence thing. Now, what seems to have happened is that Jennifer Lawrence was doing an interview on the red carpet, okay, and she let slip that she used Apple's iCloud on her phone. And what this seemed to do is this seemed to make a curious info security expert go away and see if they could brute force her password. Now, I'm distilling a lot of this. If you research it at the moment, you end up coming up with quite a lot of FUD. You're not sure what's way through. So I did that for you so that you don't have to. So what she does is she unwittingly reveals something about herself that she did not know at the time was a security sensitivity. Partly the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's related to Bitcoin, partly because this used to be my job. I used to work in the film industry. I used to handle very sensitive assets of pictures of celebrities, some of which were not so flattering, not nude or anything, but for the most part, but they were just like outtakes from the film that if they'd been released would have threatened the business model of the film company, or would have perhaps, not been very nice for the celebrity involved. So I wanted to kind of bring this up because this is very relevant to the change before you have to question, and the question that Taylor Swift brought up in her introduction about the fact that there's a small group of people that seem to be spearheading this future. Now, we've had comments like this one from Kaylee, who said that to merely look at these pictures is an offence. And what's interesting about the Guardian piece is that so far, what I've noticed from the mainstream media is that they haven't even said that these pictures are released. What's coming out from most dispatch boxes is that somebody has threatened to release them, that they were charging Bitcoin in exchange for these pictures. But what they're not reporting is that actually they're already out there. Now, this kind of brings up quite a lot of complex issues. I've put what I hope is some balance into the links below. So the Guardian is saying that you should be a criminal for looking at them because you are driving demand for those pictures. There is also Time magazine that says that's absolutely ridiculous. You can't just start criminalizing people for clicking on links. And actually, what about her personal responsibility for not hiring someone who could tell her not to put sensitive images on network-enabled devices? Apple, the latest on this just before we came on air was that Apple's stock price is up, so don't worry, the speculators are okay. They're not going to see any financial damage because of this. And they've released a statement saying that their system was not hacked. I can tell you that the way the hacker did it was by brute forcing the password. I found that from quite a few independent sources. That this was basically, he just guessed her email. In fact, actually, a lot of the people that I worked for, their emails were very guessable. Right? All you have to know is the name of the actor, and then just try that in front of Hotmail, in front of Gmail, and eventually you would get it. And their passwords were terrible as well. Like sometimes I had to know the passwords, and they were absolutely abysmal. So that's the latest of where we are at the moment. And what this brings up is an issue that Max Kaiser brought up. Again, link is in the show below. Blackmail insurance is on the rise. You now have insurance companies that are saying to you, look, if you've got some embarrassing photos of you lurking around, you can actually buy blackmail insurance where we will pay the blackmailers to get off your back. So I know it's a very controversial issue, and I know it's kind of sensitive and everyone's got kind of a strong opinion about it, but I don't like to skirt around the edges on this show. I just like to go straight for the money shot. So I wanted to talk about this because yet again, someone hasn't changed before they had to. Anyone?
Well, apparently Jennifer Lawrence isn't a girl that goes to the London Bitcoin group. I thought that's who that was, but now that I know that she's a famous actress, I think it's just stupid that why would you pay? There's no guarantee, even if they do pay, that those photos won't be released. And this whole idea that looking at something makes you a criminal, I have no control over what pops up on my screen a lot of times. I logged into Facebook the other day, and somebody had posted a still shot from a porno on my feed. And a lot of people on that group were quite annoyed by that, and they're, my kids look at my Facebook account. Why the hell did you post that? And the thing that came out too, where the British government had issued the statement saying if you watch that video of the guy getting his head chopped off, that you were going to be convicted of terrorism or something for watching the video.
That's a good point. I'm glad that you did that. I'm glad that you're linking that with ISIS, because a lot of these trolls are just taking advantage of our attention seekers, because not only is the hacker, by the way, is separate, I think, from the person selling them. I think they're two separate entities as far as I can tell. Sorry, did one of you tell me that? It was Nick. Nick, you told me that, right?
Sorry, what was that? Tom messaged me just real quick. It was about the how they got.
Did you say that? Did you? Too busy looking at pictures. Did you say that the hacker is separate from the person extorting money?
Yeah, I had read somewhere that the person who's extorting money had just collected all of these images from other sources, and then they compiled like the huge list and the storage of it, and then they're trying to sell them. It's money. I mean, these women would get tons of money from Playboy if they were good to go on Playboy. but now these pictures got leaked and they basically lost their payday.
So if any reputable PR person, if you went to your PR manager and said, okay, someone's got pictures of me, if they're worth that salt, they'll tell you to release them first. Because if you don't tell your story the way you want it told, someone else will capture the narrative. And I know that's really, really hard, easy to say, hard to do. But one of the problems I've got with websites like reputation.com, have you guys seen reputation.com? There's lots of websites like it. Oh, sorry, that's not an issue I want to bring up right now. Reputation.com. There's lots of these popping up. And what they'll do is they'll manage your online reputation. And there's actually a quote that was brought up in the article that I posted, When Everyone Becomes Blackmailable. You check that out. I actually hat it to the Kaiser report for that. I actually got it from them. And what these companies do is they make the first page or first 3 pages come up with positive stuff about you. Because remember, Google is your CV now. Your CV isn't some piece of paper. It is whatever the search engine says about you. The problem is that people within this industry are now finding it very, very difficult to, so this is where Lloyd's of London are starting to do the insurance. But the problem is, he's saying that it's very difficult now to get things to rank highly on Google that aren't authentic, that aren't real. So what they do is they just set up lots of independent websites with your side of the story. What a decent PR manager will actually say is you need to release these pictures, disempower the blackmailer. That takes away the blackmailer's ability to make any money on them, and you then get to own it.
Yeah, and play off the publicity. The old saying, publicity is bad publicity. I mean, it's a great opportunity when this happens for them to capitalize off of it.
Doesn't it? It doesn't feel like that. Not all. It's also a myth that a lot of women make their careers in acting by taking their clothes off. That's not true, because for every 100 women that do that, it's only one that will ever become famous. It's all about having the right PR manager at the get-go, because they've got to seed the story out to all the journalists. They've got to leak it, right? So they've got to send a few images to that person at that news desk, and they've got to say, look, how, you're interested in this, and they'll be either, look, the news desk is really busy, we've got all this stuff going on in Syria, or sometimes that even works in your favor. If you've got a lot of really serious news, PR people will actually, news desks will actually pick up a trivial story like this one to counterbalance all the serious stuff that's going on in the world.
I think that this all goes back to just being responsible. I mean, come on, if you put all your photos on a cloud server that was linked to your phone and they're really that sensitive, then, I mean, it's okay, it's criminal, it's not nice to, to brute force someone's, server, and it's not theirs, and that's theft. Okay, but I mean, come on. You got to be a little bit more clever.
But you're only saying that because you already know, because you've obviously been following Taylor Swift, so you know about all this stuff.
Oh yeah, I follow Taylor Swift. I love her music. It's great. Now, what I was saying is that okay, I think that a lot of this also this laziness. I mean, on the one hand, smartphones are great because it's basically like a really small computer and you can do a lot of stuff, including have Bitcoin wallets on it. But it kind of makes people lazy. They just put it on their phone, and they just have that cloud, and the cloud is kind of like the Borg. It's kind of has all this stuff in it, and the people that aren't really in control of it anymore. Or they have limited amount. They're trusting third parties too much with a lot of their info, and this is an example of it. Why? Yeah, but I'm wondering, why is everyone attacking all the people that are clicking on the pictures? I mean, we talked about it. Everyone's been trained to click on all this stuff. We get the message all the time. Yes. Click on this. Let's look at this cool thing. Look at this. And now it's bad. Don't do it. Don't do that. Don't. Now it's bad. Now this is the wrong message. We got to talk about why these people lost their personal pictures because they didn't control them in a safe way, and it's unfortunate, but that needs to be the topic, and not who's looking at what. That's every day we're taught to be looking at all kinds of stuff. You want to say something? Okay, just a minute.
There's, I've never had nude photos taken of myself. So I have no fear of them being out there. If there's nude photos of me somewhere, they were taken without my knowledge. they just don't exist. And I mean, if you're going to have those sort of things done, and I've worked on a lot of people's computers over the years, and I've come across some pretty disturbing things when I've been looking through their hard drives trying to fix their virus problems and things. And it's not nice when you're looking at a friend's computer and you come across naked pictures of them.
Right. So people aren't clued up, and they're not necessarily conscious of the fact that when something has been witnessed, even if it's a machine that's doing the witnessing, if it's got a network-enabled device and it's not encrypted, you should just expect it to be public sooner or later. It's only a matter of time. It's a ticking time bomb. And this particularly relates to the radical transparency movement, people like Mark Zuckerberg, who are slowly eroding the barriers between our lives, our personal lives, and ourselves. And what people like him are espousing is a world where we're all naked anyway. And it's like, well, I've always been naked under these clothes. That was never a secret. And his point would be, I'm sure, if I'm not constructing him too much, is that, look, it was always going to be a matter of time until what you thought was private becomes public. And what we do behind closed doors, and when we think that we're actually in private, is not really private after all. That eventually everything will come out, and then it's just a question of, if not now, then when.
I'd like to make the point that these kind of data breaches aren't new. It's not like the first time anybody has ever been hacked or had something stolen from them and released. If I remember the Pamela Anderson sex tape that came out over a decade ago, that was like stolen from a safe by like someone who worked for them. So I mean, this kind of stuff just happens, and you have to take the measures, to control your data the best you can. This is something like you control your private keys. If you don't, it's not really your Bitcoin. If you're letting somebody else host your data for you, it's not really your data anymore. It's theirs.
So the best way to think about Dropbox as someone else's computer, right? So imagine just sending those pictures to somebody else's computer somewhere. That's what you're doing when you're sending stuff to Dropbox.
I mean, and is this any bigger than like Microsoft having their latest OS beta released early? Like that happens all the time. Someone internal gets hacked and they get a release of like Windows 7, a year and a half early or something like that, and it's already on torrent sites and people are running it on their computers. That's a fucking big company that spends a lot of money on security, and it happens to them. I'm really not that surprised that some actresses or actors got their accounts hacked or brute forced or socially engineered.
Yeah, but to be honest, like these celebrities are terrible at information security. Like they literally have passwords like Arsenal. Like it's a joke. Like the
and they have the
ridiculous.
money to not be so
Right.
so insecure. So
Exactly.
I mean, it sucks that it happens. I mean, nobody should be that exposed, and it sucks that people invade their privacy like that. But it's going to happen, and unless you take measures yourself to be secure, you're kind of just hanging it out there.
Yeah, and I mean, look at how easy it is to get copies of pre-release movies that were for screening only and things like that on the internet, because the studio handed them out to people to just look at, and one of those persons made a copy and put it on the internet, and so you can watch the movie before it's even in the theater. And I mean, that's the same industry that these people are working in, and it's just, yeah, they got to just take responsibility and either not do these things that they don't want to be out there, or make them more secure. It's like putting the stuff in a locker at a bus station.
In a way, what we're saying is that these celebrities already take part in an industry that is very narcissistic and deals with the fixation of beauty, and particularly like with these beauty pageants with young girls. Actually, the pederasty goes back to ancient Greece, even 4,000 years. But this obsession with the young female body is a relatively post-war phenomena. Like, we didn't really see that, unless someone can correct me, who's a more trained historian than I am. That's a relatively recent phenomena. And what we're now having, and that's not because we're trying to blame anyone, I'm just simply trying to explain or give a narrative. I really like what Anne Hathaway, I hope this is her quote, I did a little bit of research, but I couldn't falsify it. And she says, I'm sorry that we live in a culture that commodifies sexuality of unwilling participants. And she's right in a sense that this wouldn't have happened at all unless the hacker could already assess whether or not these were going to be desirable.
Which, of course, they are. I mean, it's desirable to see Jennifer Lawrence in a film, right? Like, we all want to see her in a film. It's just natural that there's going to be people who want to see her naked. That's just...
Yeah, but hang on. Where are the boundaries here? Like, what Anne Hathaway is saying is unwilling. Like, this is tantamount to, you know, forcing someone. Just because you can't see them and just because they're not there with you at the time doesn't make it any less abusive, surely.
Okay, yeah. I mean, she's got a point. I totally agree with her. I just think that, I mean, I totally agree with her quote, but in the sense that we do live in a world where sexuality is commodified and so on. But I mean, it still doesn't remove the fact about what I was saying, that people just have to take care of if they want things to be private, then they have to take care of them. And of course, people shouldn't steal things, but they still have to take care of them. And I don't know. I think the word assault, I think there was one article that you into. I think that we need to be careful about that. I mean, for me, I always said assault is when you physically touch me, you know, and I wouldn't just, you know, throw assault. It doesn't matter in a lot of different contexts, but assault is when you touch somebody, and that's the, like, kind of the line. I mean, I don't agree with everything that article said in Time, but I think that, yeah, it's a shame when media throws around really big words like that just to get a nice headline. It's clickbait. That's the weird thing. It's like clickbait to say that it's bad to click on the pictures. You know, it's really like this really weird, you know, situation, right? That we talked about the clickbait too, and about the beheadings. That is, I didn't realize that, and that's also I wanted to. I mean, I guess we're getting on a tangent here talking about beheadings, but
no, we're not going on a tangent at all. You're right.
Okay. Well, okay, just check this out. I didn't know. I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling that Saudi Arabia beheaded a bunch of people this year. Okay, and it's just ironic because America, Saudi Arabia is an ally of the USA, right? Okay, for years, and America and Germany sell them weapons. Okay. And everyone is freaking out because ISIS, or whatever you want to call them, beheaded some people, which was horrible. I'm not trying to say that's not horrible. So, okay, but Saudi Arabia beheads people on a regular basis, and not for a good reason either. So I found this article.
They've got the oil. They've got oil.
Hold on. What it says, brothers beheaded for smuggling marijuana into the kingdom. So basically, these two brothers got beheaded for smuggling marijuana into Saudi Arabia. But nobody's clicking on that, you know. Nobody's clicking on that. People want to see, you know, what's her name naked, the stolen pictures. I mean, you know, I don't know. Maybe if we stole the beheaded pictures, it would be more interesting and people would click on it. But I think it's a really weird dynamic we have here. Everyone's freaking out about the behead videos, or it's illegal to do it. But this, look here, I'm going to do a screen share. This little picture here, that's okay. That's not illegal. Yeah? These guys, their crime was smuggling marijuana in, but it's illegal to watch the beheading video. And so, really weird.
Should probably give people a warning before you do that video. Go on.
Right. Well, sorry. But basically, I mean, that's about the, you know, monopoly of the narrative, about who gets to tell the story and what's okay to tell and all that. And we can't, you know, just let any, you know, we should be able to, you know, look at what we want, and
we're really losing our innocence as a species, and nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing should be secret, and I think the more people become aware of it, the more people want to look at the dark web, you know. And I'm hearing this a lot. People saying, "What is this dark web?" And it's like, well, it's the internet. It's just not Google's version of the internet, right? And I wanted to quote John Lennon, who says that we live in a civilization where practicing violence openly is welcomed, but, you know, making love is something you do in private. That a lot of this is a cultural phenomena where it's perfectly okay to go beheading somebody and putting that all over social media, but if you put naked pictures, like, well, I think one of the things that Brian Sovereign said on Twitter the other day is he thinks that we should all now take pictures of ourselves naked and post them up online in a kind of movement of solidarity with Jennifer and the other 99 celebrities who have allegedly had their accounts hacked. And Emma Watson, yeah, no, for some of us you wouldn't want that. Like for me, you definitely wouldn't want that. But like Emma Watson was saying that right now she feels like there's a complete lack of empathy. Like everyone's just focusing on the wrong issue. Like I guess she would probably argue with this commentary. She might argue that it's all very well us geeks talking about information security, but nobody sent them the memo apparently. And then it's a question of responsibility. And it's also like just the kids that are tweeting about this. Like a lot of kids, like we're saying on social media, on Reddit especially, that this is all they're talking about at school. So they're not learning anything, apparently. They're just talking about Jennifer Lawrence. And I think for me, again, here she comes, Taylor Swift. She just nails it. She's like, sensitivity of data stored is not reflected in the authentication and security practices enforced by users. And effectively, as she goes on to say in another tweet, that effectively celebrities are people too, and that really they're just basically coming up with an occupational hazard right now.
But the industry has like pushed for ease of use and not security. Everything is about comfort. How easy can you do what you want to do with these devices, not how securely or how safe you can act or be with these things. And that's kind of fucked up. And you can't really blame the geeks for pointing at people and saying, you know, this information is out there. You know, picking up a book, you know, computers for dummies, etc. That stuff exists. They've existed for a long time now.
And so then comes this is where it starts getting tragic. So a couple of years ago, we had the tragic event of Amanda Todd, who was a teenager who was blackmailed at the age of 12 because some pedophile, I should say, got her to take her top off on camera, and then later on he came back and then tried to blackmail her and her family, saying that he would send it all to her friends. And then over the years, she then had to move school, and a whole bunch of drama happened. And then it happened again, and then she released a very, very moving video where this is her suicide note. This is a screen grab for her suicide note. She doesn't say any words, but she just goes through these bits of paper with her thoughts and feelings on. And this kind of erupted because, and this is my friend Larissa, she's got a blog called Histories of Things to Come. It's a very, very good blog, a very thoughtful blog. And she kind of analyzes it. But what happened was, and this is my big thing, is that we ended up with a very one-sided story of Amanda Todd where none of her actions were taken into consideration. We were told that she was the victim of cyberbullying, and I hear this on mainstream news all the time on the BBC. They just say, "Oh, isn't it tragic? All these kids now, you know, with all this cyberbullying and like, you know, harassing people," but they're not looking at the whole picture. And what has emerged since then, and I've kind of been keeping an eye on the story, it's still waging even right now, is that because the whole story wasn't being told, what happened was you had independent bloggers like this guy, Philip Rose, who then comes along and says, actually guys, that's not the whole story. She was also, when she moved school, also uploading naked pictures of herself, getting her friends to do it with her, all through her teens, and this is why she was beaten up at school. This is why she ended up committing suicide. This was the limiting factor. And the problem is, and I think Philip says it in here, and I'm not necessarily endorsing all of his views because I've looked elsewhere on this website and it's pretty controversial. But what he's saying is that we can't tackle these hard issues if we're not willing to tell the whole truth. If all you're going to do when you search for Amanda Todd on Google, you get very different search results than if you search for it on DuckDuckGo. Right, because clearly her family, understandably, I don't know if this is true, but understandably if they have, they've tried to maybe get some expertise to make sure that the search results are, you know, favorable. But of course, what will happen with any PR company that does that, any SEO, they will just focus on Google because that's the one that most people use, and it's easier than going around all the search engines trying to optimize. Not only that, but you've got to keep doing it. Right, so you can't just do it once, you've got to keep maintaining it. And it's harder and harder to do the more people speak out. So at the same time as them trying to hold this down, trying to say, look, this is the truth, and she didn't do anything wrong, it's like, well, what was she doing in the privacy of her own bedroom when the parents were somewhere else, and what access did she have to the internet, and what was she, when she started getting her friends to do it with her, and the kind of animosity that created with her friendships? Did nobody ask her, did nobody say, who's looking out for this kid? Do you know what I mean? Because this is irreversible. Once you do this, that's it. It's public, and it's public for good.
It's funny, there is this I'm sorry, I showed
Yeah,
up.
please.
Yeah, I just was thinking this kind of weird thought I had, that someone hacking into like a celebrity's computer and releasing naked pictures, sort of a bit of a scandal, but look, we're all just being spied by governments, and it's sort of fine. I sound a bit like, I don't know, a
That's
bit like
a good point.
but I mean, wait a second. It's like when it's done by some sort of obscure NSA, hello NSA, by the way, and it's kind of okay. And this sort of stuff, like naked pictures, it's like, I'm just trying to think about it as kind of a system without really drawing lines between these things and privacy in a way. Like, for instance, maybe if you blackmail the aid, it might destroy your family. Like, for instance, if you played in a porn movie when you're young and then you're a granny and your children laughing at you and stuff like that, whether it affects you or whether it's just general thing about who is allowed to spy on you, what creates a scandal, what really changes lives and stuff. I don't know. I'm not really...
People, according to the research that I've read, people that are victims of blackmail way underestimate their ability to cope in the event that the blackmailer follows through. And so a lot of people don't realize, and this is what a good PR consultant will tell you, is that actually if you manage this correctly, given what's happened and given that the past is the past and there's nothing we can do about it now, the best way to do this is actually to turn this to your advantage. Of course, that's incredibly painful. I felt like Jennifer Lawrence going to the FBI and getting them to launch an investigation, whilst understandable, probably wasn't the best way, because all you're going to do is play whack-a-mole. You're going to be there forever trying to stamp this thing out, and it's just impossible.
It's just funny, what do we make a big deal out of, Whether we make a big deal out of having naked pictures of us released, or whether we're fine with, like, our emails being read or potentially...
Right.
There's overlap, too, from the people who I've seen who are, okay with the NSA spying on you, but not okay with these nude pictures being leaked. It's like, it's okay if the spying is done, to benefit me. If it's okay for your privacy to be invaded, as long as I think it benefits me. But as soon as it doesn't, and you do something to somebody I don't, that I like, that's bad and wrong, and you shouldn't do that. Instead of having just, one overall, like you said, Ksenia, these are the same. It's basically the same fucking thing. It's individuals invading the privacy of other individuals, and in one instance it's okay, and in the other instance it's not okay. I would just go, it's not okay at all. If you have to go up and beyond to get into somebody's information to invade their privacy, that's not okay. You're infringing on, their being.
Yeah, so technically, like, if you think of some sort of ideal functioning law, then someone who takes my naked pictures of me of my computer should be prosecuted the same way that, I don't know, people work for NSA should be.
Yes, I agree with that. In fact, Max Kaiser actually said the other day in response to my retweet of Emma Watson, and your protest regarding NSA spying are where? So maybe this is an opportunity now for this group of influential celebrities to actually jump on this as an opportunity to protest against spying of all kinds.
Yeah, and also some thought I had on bullying. It's sort of comes down to people were bullied like throughout the history. I mean, you can blackmail without internet. I mean, it just existed, and maybe the answer to it is just some sort of building up people's resilience against it. Because it all comes down to this. It's like if a girl, her picture's being released and whatever, maybe she has just, sorry, pardon my French, fucked up her her family's fucked up, that they can't just say, look, it's just some sort of an old wanker released pictures of you naked online, and so what? So maybe no one really intervened.
Yeah. So what was interesting about the Amanda Todd story was that none of her friends came to her support when it happened, or at least I didn't hear any reports of them doing that. So these pictures were released, and everyone started bullying her. Right, so it wasn't like, oh my God, you've been blackmailed. That's disastrous. We should help. You know, everyone like come to her support. No, no, no. Instead, she was a slut. Instead, like they started calling her names and they started picking her, and she had to leave that school and she had to move to another.
Is the problem is someone releasing her naked pictures, or is the problem as a society which surrounds her, which actually, because it's like, I recently looked into it. Actually, there is this thing when one person starts bullying another one, is the crowd which supports, it's like bystanders, which actually make...
Bystander non-intervention in sociology. Yes.
It's like, this is the issue. It's not the fact that someone leaked. Basically, if the society turns around and say, well, this hacker must be really a wanker if he did that because he invaded someone's privacy and everyone blames him, then it's fine. If everyone's like, oh, sweet, we now have pictures of this person naked. Let's look at them and let's retweet them and so on.
It comes from a position of weakness.
I've been listening for quite a time. I think it's a very, very difficult. It's a very difficult topic. Let's get back to this actress for a second. So she's a grown-up woman, and she obviously had taken some naked pictures of her, free willingly, and. Yes, as Theo said, it's not good that somebody broke into her data storage and then made them public. That's not really okay. Yes, maybe she should have taken more care about security. But the thing is, you feel safe until something happens. Dropbox or any other cloud storage service, those are big companies, and of course you tend to trust them if you don't know about decentralized storage options. It's the same way as you trust the locksmith who has built the lock into your apartment door, and you trust that you're safe in your apartment until somebody breaks in. And then you realize that you're not safe anymore. And I think this is also the fact that, Chris, what you earlier said, those people, they are so upset and they feel helpless and they kind of overreact and they don't get that they are far more in control than it might look at the first glance. And for the second thing with this young girl who in the end committed suicide, actually there are a lot of different aspects mixing together, like, okay, she got bullied, which is of course not okay, but yes, as Ksenia said, that's been done throughout history. All kids, some do it at some point. I think most of us who are in this chat right now probably have been bullied at some point. And the other thing is, okay, yes, somebody blackmailed her and then posted the picture. Of course, that's not okay too. But I think everybody's forgetting that the real crime in that second thing is that there was a 12-year-old girl and someone, a grown-up person, made her get naked and filmed it. And that is the only thing that's really, really, that is the really shocking part about that. And I don't know her, and of course nobody can look in her head, but I can only imagine that if she, after that, might have shown erratic behavior, like you said there was another article and someone said, oh, okay, but then she also continued to post half-naked pictures of herself in another post or something like that, and she did kind of weird things like trying to make her friends do that too or something like that. I am very much sure that those behaviors, that those things she did, maybe highly likely all turned back to the abuse that she obviously suffered from when somebody made her take her shirt off and film her. And there was one thing Theo said much earlier, but it stuck to me. And Theo said assault starts in the point someone's touching you. And that's not correct. Assault starts when someone's threatening to touch you or threatening to do you harm otherwise if you not agree. Yeah.
Yeah, you crossed a boundary. Go ahead.
Sorry, I sort of feel like I'm going to talk a lot. Stop me if I start. I just had an idea. If I were an actress with a lot of naked pictures of me online released by some sort of hackers, what I'd probably do, I'd probably donate a lot of money to run, I don't know, vocational courses for kids to protect their privacy. Another idea I had is that someone should create a foundation named after this girl who killed herself, actually to spend money on teaching how you protect your privacy online. And there are people doing it already. I mean, I know a bunch of people doing it for teenage sort of activists in Belarus because they're completely reckless. And same in Russia as well. I mean, kids who went to protest and filmed each other with bamboozer and stuff and completely put themselves in trouble, and no one actually just teaches them, look, if you want to go into politics or if you want to take pictures of your naked, just make sure you know exactly how to protect your data. And there are, for instance, I know a guy who teaches journalists because they have no clue. Like, old guys go to whatever, Syria, and they just put themselves in trouble, and they put a lot of people in trouble as well because they don't know how to deal with the data. And another weird comment I had, tell the truth about this girl who killed herself. We don't know. Maybe she wanted to blackmail the guy, because another friend of mine told me a story that like a 9-year-old kid just comes to him and say, you know, give me some money, otherwise I go to my parents and I tell them that you try to film with me. So we don't know what happened really. But my point was I started talking because I had this idea about just educating people, especially young kids, about this sort of stuff. You can do like one course on protection of your data and one course on what happens if it actually leaks.
Well, Max Kaiser says that this is the financialization of everything. Everything costs money now, which means that nothing's off the table. Nothing is beyond reproach. So now if you've got pictures of someone, that's it. That's monetizable. You need to pay your rent, right? And I wanted to just address this point that somebody came up with in the comments about my point about the land prices being arbitrary. This is on my schedule to bring this up in a show into its own right. But he's saying property goes up only when neighborhood is nice. Property owners benefit from a nice system. Oh, I've lost it. It's gone off the screen. The values don't go up and down arbitrarily. Okay, so what I meant by that is I meant that the arbitrary, generally speaking, our preferences are fairly arbitrary in the sense that we get a lot of our desires from other people. In fact, it's actually the second-degree connections, not your first-degree connections of peers, that tend to influence your behavior the most. What I mean by arbitrary, you're right, there are some primary factors. However, a lot of the property is going up in price because there's large numbers of foreign investors coming in who only see property in terms of its exchange value, not in terms of its value as use. Now, you're right that if the local amenities improve, and I'm a good citizen and a good member of this village, then of course my energy and my activity will raise the price of the property and raise the value. The problem comes when people are able to just treat property as a speculative investment. That then drives the price up, which then basically what you're doing is you're creating a chasm, a whole sort of pyramid of people just kind of drift away from everyone else who can't afford it. And it's not like coffee. If the price of coffee goes up, I just stop drinking coffee. But if the price of my housing goes up, I can't just stop living. What will happen is I'll now have to start pricing in a new sentiment into the market, namely being homeless, or namely not paying my rent and causing all kinds of, backlogs in the legal system, which is what could potentially happen. It is historically precedented. We've seen before that when middle class is ostracized and are told that their living standards are going to decrease, these middle class people have a tendency to go out rioting in the streets. So even as a capitalist, as I am, I still recognize that there are social costs further on down the line that if we don't nip in the bud now is going to be a problem. And how how I'm threading that into what we're talking about is that, look, you know, we don't know anything about these blackmailers. The benefit they've got is they're able to hide behind an anonymous shield. Whilst meanwhile, while the celebrity, whoever's in the public, like it's got something to lose, they're already a spectacle. They've already got the attention. In a way, it kind of disincentivizes you to be too famous, right? Now, if you've got your rent to pay, what's the story coming from the blackmailer? And, you know, be honest, like, if he needed to pay the rent, what limits are people willing to go to? You've got to live on something.
Ah, so you reckon that it happens because people need to?
Well, a lot of these blackmailers apparently come from developing countries. They don't come from developed countries.
That's a good point. But I think there are also nasty people who just want to blackmail people.
Oh, sure, definitely. Yeah, I mean, also revenge pornography is also a big issue right now. It's not directly relevant to Bitcoin because that hasn't come up yet in the Bitcoin space. But yeah, a lot of people are getting old pictures. I mean, think of it this way. A landfill site is a gold mine because people generally don't know how to secure erase their hard drives. So as a speculator, you can just go to a landfill site, dig up a bunch of old hard drives, get a bunch of old phones, go through the data, use some recovery software. I mean, for every 10 phones you find, do you not think you're bound to find something on there, even if it's bank accounts, even if it's something, you know, slightly more savory, like, you know, financial details?
Was it, how many people in this chat right now have paper shredders? Do all of you own a paper shredder? I own a paper shredder.
Yeah.
You know, I shred everything. I take the labels off of boxes that get delivered from Amazon, and those go through my paper shredder. So I mean, it is just things you have to do if you don't want your data to be recovered by other people.
Yeah. Someone is saying, William Russell is saying in the comments that maybe he's old-fashioned. He was born in '84. I don't think that makes you old-fashioned. But should we not learn from this and apply common sense as to avoid it in the future? Asking a leopard to change their stripes is futile. The thing about the leopards changing their stripes is that a lot of these young people, they want to make themselves vulnerable, and making yourself vulnerable is a natural part of growing up. You want to do something that scares you. But in the old day, when you did that, you know, it was just the two of you, or it was just a picture, an analog picture that you could show. Nowadays, we have this idea of data persistence. We've also got companies like Snapchat that are deliberately building features in that encourage this kind of behavior where it only shows the image for like 3 seconds on the other person's phone. Now that's kind of silly because they can just screen cap the phone. The fact is that once that data leaves your domicility, leaves your proximity, it's distal now. It's in the distance. It's far away from you. You relinquish control over it. And I think this is a multifaceted, complex problem that begins by being completely frank and candid about what has happened so far, because what I'm concerned about is that a lot of the mainstream conversation and dialogue isn't taking into account complicated, hard to admit factors, like the fact that she ended up, as Anna said, sort of almost conditioned, like this had happened to her, and then she kind of continued to do it in some kind of perverse psychological reliving the experience because it felt familiar. I'm not a psychologist, as you can tell. I don't know about these things. But the fact is, there is evidence. Blog TV, for example, said that they banned her account because she was doing this. It was a breach of their terms. That wasn't being admitted. And also this Jennifer Lawrence thing where, and I can say as someone who used to work in that industry, I can tell you that a lot of the film industry, particularly the actors and actresses, don't take good measures to secure their data.
Well, like the actors and actresses, they live in a space where they farm out all their security. They have personal security for their bodyguards and all of that. A lot of them live in houses with gates around them and things like that, and they just rely on other people to do their security for them. And they just, so they don't have any, they just put that trust into other people, and they just assume that the other people are going to take care of it for them. And so when something like this does happen, I think they're just kind of taken by it because they're like, oh, I thought that I was protected because I have all these people that are supposed to take care of that for me. And
Yeah, like we did with the banks, like we did with our wealth, where we gave our wealth away to the banks and told them they could look after it.
Right. And again, it's one of those things. The worst problems that happen are the ones that you don't expect to happen because they just are unexpected. You trust these people to secure something for you, but then you find out, well, those people didn't have the ability to keep it secure.
Yeah.
The people that were guarding it didn't know how to guard it.
Yeah, you lose your sense of danger. As one of these people, you think that you're untouchable, and you think, just look at all the paedophile scandals that we've had recently in Britain in the BBC. And it turned out there was an entire fucking paedophilia ring because these celebrities felt a sense of security, like they were untouchable because they had these impeachable reputations. And what we're happening now, we're living in a world where time itself is changing. Time is much, much faster than it used to be. Things happen at an accelerated rate because people have so much to choose from. We've got so much choice that we can turn very quickly. Now, Ajahn is saying that if blackmailers are from developing countries, maybe it's because old phones and computers are in their landfill sites. That is a very good point. Also, I should mention that the reason why it sometimes appears as though someone's coming from a developing country is because a lot of these attackers use the Tor network, which masquerades their true location. So sometimes that can be why. And also, if you were going to release some information, you're more likely to choose a country that has, not such a good extradition treaty, for example, so that the data center can't be seized and that kind of thing.
What I wanted to say is that I think that people need to, be able to defend themselves against bullying. And that's the way that relates is that, everyone is walking around with their smartphones now, and kids at school, and then, they bully each other. They take compromising pictures like we're talking about, and they send them to everybody, and then they, in some cases, they get from a mob of people or whatever, they get bullied, and people need to learn, kids need to learn how to defend themselves against bullies and stand up for themselves. And the reason that we're interested in these pictures and not in the pictures of the politicians and the bankers like you were talking about is because it's a softer target, because bullies look for soft targets. Mm-hmm. They look for someone that's easy to bully. They don't look for someone difficult to bully. And that was one of the questions that you brought up, is that why are we interested in these photos? Why aren't we interested in the private information of the bankers and the people in the government and so on? Because it's not a soft target. It's not so easy to bully them as it is one of us.
Nor does it paint as big a picture or a big a target on your back. You start hacking, the private lives of high-up banking officials and financiers and politicians, etc. There are way more people that they have on their dole to come after you than this actress or even 100 actresses have.
Yeah, and I agree about the whole assault thing. Yeah, all I wanted to say is that that we need to talk about what that really means as more as a word. And I just felt bad that the newspapers and so on were just kind of throwing it around and not really. I didn't feel like some of the time it was really applied, and it wasn't. It was about the pictures that were released now that we're talking about, these naked pictures, and they were using the word assault for you clicking on these naked pictures that were leaked. And I think that that's a danger. We need to talk about that. Is that okay? Is it okay to call that assault? Or
let me ask.
What's the limit? You know what I mean? And we need to talk about that. Just a minute. And I was.
Let me ask a controversial question.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, if you got an email in your inbox and it said this contains a naked picture of someone you know, would you look?
I would probably think it was. Okay, yeah.
If you knew that it contained a picture of someone you know. And there you go.
From a trustworthy source, and I didn't think.
There's your problem right there. The fact is, this brings us face to face
Sure,
with
I would
this
probably,
issue.
yeah, I would
This
probably
is
do it.
assuming I haven't already seen them naked.
Yes, it is. But isn't it interesting the way, some of the closest relationships I've had in the past, I'm celibate now, but I used to
But
go
I would,
dating.
but
One
I
of
would
the
want to tell, I would
interesting
want to see if it's real, and I would want to tell that person. I mean, I would want to see if they really do have a naked picture of them, or what the
Right.
hell.
So I think I can safely say for all of us here, we wouldn't start bullying that person. That's just a dick move. But the point is that there is something about being in a relationship with someone and truly being in love with someone where you get to see the side of themselves that they themselves haven't even come to terms with yet. And we're losing that now. I mean, it may be for good reasons. It may be that a transhumanist maybe is watching this and wants to tell me the answer to this. But at the moment, what I feel is we're losing intimacy because now we can be intimate with too many people at the same time. And that, by definition, means it's not intimate because now you're close to all of these people. So are we really talking about a world where nothing is private anymore? And if nothing is private, I don't understand quite how a species like ours that is so bound up in our bodies and is so infatuated with, like, who is Satoshi Nakamoto, and is it a woman or is it a man? And the fact is we are a very social animal, and these things do matter to us, even though it defies logic and there's no rational explanation for it. The reason why blackmailers do this is because you will answer the question, even though with your facial expressions, is that yes, if an email turned up in your inbox and you knew that it contained a picture of someone you knew, what this would give you, this isn't like porn, there's plenty of porn on the internet, it's someone you know, and that makes it different. It's an exclusive experience that you're looking for.
It's funny. I just remembered something which is a little bit off topic, but we spoke a bit about pedophilia and spying and data protection. Because I'm in Russia, it just crossed my mind that I think it was about a couple of years ago, they passed a law here about basically a law which allows government to blacklist any websites and to censor everything. And the reason why they passed it, as they explain, is to protect children from information harmful to their health and development, including porn. So I was thinking the weird connection between these two things, and sometimes that's why maybe I don't really like when these scandals happen and people say, oh, this country is full of pedophiles and child porn and blah, blah, blah. It's so much used by governments to start spying on us and censor websites and basically deprive us of anonymity as well, because they say, okay, we need to be able to take this data offline, or we need to be able to block this person, we need to be able to spy on this person. And this is kind of a dangerous thing, because I'm afraid if we're just going to all start running around and saying, no, bullying is really bad and child pornography is really bad, it's sort of also, whom do we allow to basically deal with this? Because I don't trust governments, I think they're evil, and they can affect our lives in an evil way, much more than like some hacker from Nigeria releasing pictures of me naked,
Yeah.
It's really sort of a subtle thing, because this is also used by governments to deprive people of their privacy as well.
And we just saw here in the United States, the Director of Health and Human Services was arrested for child pornography in one of the central states. I don't remember which one it was. And what happens was he was supposed to be in charge of monitoring the child pornography, and then he got nailed for being part of the ring. But we keep seeing all these government honeypots they keep setting up, and what's happening is the honeypots are catching other honeypots, and the governments keep setting up these webs of child porn stings, and they keep dragging people into it unwittingly a lot of times.
Yeah, like Cliff Richard in the UK. He had his house raided. He wasn't even told that it was going to happen because he was away on holiday, but the BBC found out before he did.
What I was actually thinking of, after this law, I think, passed in Russia, and they basically either...
Oh no, what happened? We didn't find out what happened to the law that was passed.
It doesn't.
You're breaking up, Ksenia. Can you hear us? Someone's going to have to come in with something equally insightful, if not more.
Sorry. Oops.
You're breaking up. Start again.
Oh, sorry about that. My connection is shit. I got censored.
You got censored by the Russian government.
Sorry about that.
So what were you saying about this law?
Probably.
What was it about the law, though? You're back now, so tell us.
No, I just said that they can basically. Yeah, I just said that basically your website doesn't need to contain any child porn in order to get banned.
Right.
If it's something about protest in Vladivostok, you know, you're off anyway. And they just say,
Right.
well, sorry, it was child porn on your website.
Well, this is, yeah, so governments end up using this very issue as an excuse to put through a whole load of other measures just because it gets headlines and it grabs people's attention. It's the reason I didn't start this at the top of the show, because I didn't just want people to click on this just because they thought it was going to be about, you know, some titillating facts. It's because, you know, yes, it's important and we need to talk about it, but we don't just want to do what Sky News do, where they dumb everything down, and you know, they end up having the most irrelevant people come on to talk about these things as well, you know, as if these, you know, journalists are you know, have anything more to say than you guys do. For example, you guys are more qualified to talk about it because at least you get where this is going. At least you understand the technology behind it, you understand the issues, and as a result, I feel like a lot of people out there, a lot of parents out there that have got young children are missing out. You know, in a way, you could probably make a business doing information security for celebrities and parents, and you could probably do seminars and telling people how to secure their devices. I'm surprised more people aren't doing this.
It seems like a good place to start making some money if you're looking for a job and you happen to have that skill set. It's funny that you brought up the journalist report on this. I don't know if you saw. I think it was CNN. Their senior tech correspondent or whatever called 4chan as a single individual a hacker on TV. Like, this is the person who's their tech correspondent, their tech analyst, the person who's getting them the hard news for this hack, referred to 4chan as a singular entity, as the hacker itself.
Right.
How stupid is that? Did that guy even go, like, look up what 4chan is? Did he spend any time researching the subject matter that he decided to speak on? It doesn't seem so. It seems that he was just regurgitating some bullshit that he probably heard on Twitter.
Yeah,
never
right.
let the lack of knowledge of something keep you from commentating on it.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of these people are speaking without qualification. In fact, I've got some. So we've covered a lot today. It's been 2 hours. I normally, you know, try not to go over 2 hours if I can. It's a long chat. And yeah, so I have put some extra reading material down below. You know, I like to leave people from this show with more than they came with. I like to leave people with some thoughts, and also, you know, just the orgy of links below. You know, please feast on those. You know, this is all about furthering your knowledge and not assuming like your knowledge is ever complete. So yeah, this is anonymity is authenticity was one of my favorite quotes from Christopher Poole, who's a regular speaker on this topic and the creator of 4chan. Also Dana Boyd, one of my favorite researchers ever on the internet, and she talks about a lot of the social changes that we're going through. She particularly argues that actually kids are more clued up on social privacy than a lot of adults are. And kind of randomly, I also pulled out this article, A Woman's Uncanny Valley, which looks at, well, lots of things. Looks at the uncanny valley in terms of like computer science. What was the quote that I particularly pulled out? Oh, yeah. So at one point, the author says, by imitating elders and others, and in general, young people not only learn how to live in a certain culture, but they also learn what to desire. Others also function as models for desires and ambitions. And so this is kind of what I was saying about arbitrariness, and also I think Andre brought this up the other day, this notion of arbitration, arbitrary, and one of the, I don't know, it goes through a lot of things just about how computers are like a new witness. that they are here and they are witnessing our transactions, they are witnessing all our behaviors, they see everything we do, they know so much about us. And really kind of trying to relate this to the whole picture. This is what the heroes are doing. The heroes never assume that what they know is finished, is done. And I love philosophers like this. Often you'll just find them on WordPress. They'll just have some cheap blog that they set up, but they'll have all kinds of insightful things to say. So I definitely recommend that you check out that article. And yeah, just final thoughts really, guys. Like, you know, let's go back to where it all began with Taylor Swift. Can I even get the Taylor Swift thing up? Well, just tell me what you want to say and I'll get Taylor Swift back up.
Stop helping people with their computers. Make them learn some responsibility and do it themselves. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been asked, can you help me with my iTunes? I have never used iTunes, ever. I have never owned an Apple device that has synced to iTunes. I have zero experience, but I have people who come to me asking for help with their iTunes. I don't know. I don't understand why they can't just take a little bit of time to figure it out themselves.
And it also makes them dependent on you as well. It makes them dependent on you to always show them what to do. And a lot of technical people don't even know how to use iTunes because they're not fucking stupid and they don't use such crappy software. Final thoughts, Ksenia? You still there?
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts?
No, I've been just thinking that I feel like I spoke too much. So maybe I'll skip the final thoughts. No, I'm just basically thinking about the sort of something that maybe I want to talk about kind of separately, just to narrow down one of the subjects we discussed, and maybe the fact that I missed the first part. So yeah.
Yeah, well, at the beginning we were just talking about how to teach Bitcoin. This is going to be an ongoing theme that I want to come back to because I see this as all the same thing. It's all the same. Whether you're talking about people learning how to make private keys and all this kind of thing, it's all the same. We're moving into a new civilization and we're doing so unthinkingly.
Yeah.
Jamie.
I guess my thoughts are take control of your self and be responsible for what you do and own what you do, and you know, you gotta just be aware of what you're doing at the time and be aware of the consequences, I guess. Otherwise, things like this can happen. If you have nude photos of yourself and they're on the internet, they're probably going to get seen by people. That's what the internet's there for, is to show people or to share with people. So you got to just be responsible and take control of your own stuff. That's my thought.
Yeah, that's very good, and that's something that Theo brought up as well. So I'm just keeping Taylor Swift up on the screen because I think it's awesome. And Anna.
Final thoughts. Yes, take care of your things, as Jamie said, and help others to do that as well by educating them, telling them what other options there are. Tell them, for example, about Bitcoin, and enjoy teaching and learning something new every day yourself. And come to the London Women in Bitcoin meetup in October, and another one in September in Berlin. So this is gonna be lovely. So because when you're talking to someone about Bitcoin, if you want to educate somebody, always make sure and be aware of who you are talking to and be sensitive with what they already know and how they want to be addressed and how they want to be spoken to and how they want to be educated. And yeah, keep that in mind and go spread the word.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point. What I'm sensing at the end here, as we leave you for today, is that really it's not the money people want, and it's really about each other. I think that's what this internet tells us, is that we we are very social as a species. We do need each other, and I would just like to finish up on this quote that we had. I'll read the last few lines again. We will tell machines how to kill. We will give them a database of who to kill. They will learn that we all deserve to die. But I think the person that really nailed it for me was Brian Sovereign. Everyone should just start taking their clothes off and showing some solidarity with some of these victims. Thank you very much for today. Please tune in again next time, and I'll see you all later. Bye.